Here's a recap. A woman emerges from a barrel marooned on a remote island with nothing but the clothes on her back. She curses a man named Simon, who sails away, reassuring his associates that she will be unable to use magic. She proclaims to be the best mage in their clan, that nothing will stop her, except maybe hunger. Revenge isn't easy on an empty stomach. Yoshino Tokigawa is confronted at Fuwa Mihiro's family grave. This is the second time today he's been questioned about Mihiro's whereabouts. First by his teacher, and now by some strange woman calling herself Evangeline Yamamoto. He barely considers him a friend anyway. Before he can brush her off, she pulls a gun on him, claiming that a young man was seen saving a girl in a quarantine zone going by the name Fuwa Mihiro. Yoshino admits that her story seems a bit out of character for him, that is, unless she resembles his younger sister, Aika, whom Yoshino is paying his respects to. A butterfly distracts Yoshino, despite having a gun to his head, make that hundreds if not thousands of them, in the middle of winter no less. Before the woman can react, Yoshino makes his move, disarming her just as Mihiro appears, glowing with a blue aura, and gives Yamamoto a literal flying kick to the head, somehow able to stop bullets in midair. He makes quick work of her, and the two escape. The city is done for. As soon as the butterflies appeared, the entire population contracted what the government calls Black Iron Syndrome, according to Mihiro. The people around them begin turning into solid metal. Yoshino was close enough to Mihiro to avoid a similar fate. Why? Because magic, obviously. There is a clan of mages that are trying to awaken some ancient god, and the syndrome is merely a symptom of the ritual they're carrying out. Where did he even learn about magic? From a talking piece of carved driftwood. More precisely, the most powerful mage known to man, Kuzuribe Hakaz, the family's heiress, who is now reduced to speaking through a doll in order to communicate from the remote island where she was left to die. Despite how crazy it sounds, Yoshino believes every word. Mihiro and the mage made a deal. He'll help stop the clan, and in return, she promises to find his sister's killer. He says he'll even save the world in the process, which is definitely out of character for Mihiro. A giant orb rises from beneath the ocean and opens its single eye, which is pretty convincing, if nothing else. Apparently these orbs have been popping up all over the country and are the fruit of some godlike tree. Hakaz explains that there is a mage clan, the Kuzuribe, who had a power struggle, which is why Simon marooned her on an island where she is unable to use magic, besides the doll. They go to the spot where Aika died so that Hakaz can help track the killer using the talismans she left scattered around the country. They allow anyone who touches them to use the limited magical power stored within. Mihiro takes a silver dagger and stabs the floor where Aika's body was found. The murder took place a year ago, so it will take some time to pick up the killer's trail. He gives Yoshino a few talismans, warning him to be wary if any butterflies appear. They part ways since there's no point in Yoshino sticking around. Besides, Aika didn't like him anyway, and he has a girlfriend to worry about. But little does Mihiro know, the two are one and the same. She liked Yoshino more than she let on. Yamamoto regains consciousness and follows Yoshino. He touches one of the talismans and sends them both flying into a storefront across the street. Picking up the handgun she dropped, he tries to escape but becomes trapped in his school. A mage wielding a spear appears while Mihiro and Hakaz argue. Despite her warning not to fight him head-on, that's exactly what he does. In an attempt to smoke Yoshino out, Yamamoto drives him to the roof, where he doesn't hesitate to give her a warning shot, surprised at how calm he is holding a gun. She tries to make a run at him, but instead he tackles her, teleporting them over the edge. She's terrified after he barely breaks their fall using magic. Yoshino can't abandon Mihiro and decides to make a deal with Yamamoto. While they talk, she realizes that his girlfriend was Fuwa Aika. Both he and Mihiro don't accept the absurd circumstances of her death, but maybe he can find the reason behind it in a world where time is out of joint. Mihiro is not doing so hot against Natsumura, one of Seimon's henchmen, when Yoshino shows up to help. The princess tells them to retreat immediately, but Mihiro grows tired of her nagging, so he throws Yoshino the doll, so she can explain how magic works to him, and runs to face off against the spear-wielding mage. She dispels his worries about offensive magic. The Kuzuride can only use defensive magic. It's meant to maintain the logic of the world, to repair, heal, and manage it. So, instead, he uses a force field at the end of his weapon, sort of like shield bashing someone. The magic comes from the Tree of Genesis, requiring both the invocation of a clan member and an offering, anything that is a product of civilization. The more complex the offering, the more powerful the magic. Mihiro figures out pretty quickly that he can cause damage without a weapon by using the same technique on his own body. It still doesn't stop him from getting thrown around or protect him completely from injury, though. He's reminded of his sister and refuses to give up, taking a gun from a metallized cop while accidentally leaving his phone on the bus. The government sends in helicopters to destroy the tunnels and bridges in an effort to quarantine the city. In one of the tunnels, Mihiro and Natsumura have a standoff. He fires the gun at a gas tank, confident the explosion will do the trick. It's a good thing Yoshino shows up after finding Mihiro's bloody phone on the bus, using healing magic to track him. The two book it out of the tunnel just as the choppers take aim and collapse the bridge. Hakaze is pretty impressed with Yoshino's quick thinking. She narrows the identity of the killer down. It's a member of the Kuzuride clan. The duo takes a bus out to the countryside to search for more talismans and wait for more fruit to appear, so they can triangulate their trajectory. When butterflies suddenly appear, Yoshino attempts to save the few people in the area but doesn't reach a pair of kids in time. Hakaze asks Yoshino about their relationship, while Mihiro takes a bath. They've known each other since middle school, though they weren't technically friends. Mihiro was a rich kid, which isolated him from the others. After getting run over by a motorcycle in an apparent accident, Yoshino is forced to visit him in the hospital with their teacher. Due to his status, Mihiro suspects it was a hit job and asks Yoshino for help, since the adults won't believe him. It turns out he was right. Yoshino investigates and finds a connection between the cyclist and the chauffeur. They plotted revenge after Mihiro's father sacked the chauffeur. But Yoshino never wanted anything to do with him. After that, the two were always paired up. While Mihiro is alone, Hakaze poses the same question, to which he responds, "There was some stupid stuff that happened," and then the stupid punchline was Yoshino announcing to the class the real reason he was run over. He was selflessly saving a puppy. Which is when people stopped fearing him for his status and began to warm up to him. Mihiro reiterates that Yoshino is a vicious person, but he concedes he might not have made it this far without him. Seima knows that the two of them are catching up and have already triangulated the Tree of Exodus location from the fruit's trajectory. Another clan member, Tetsuma, who shares concerns about the princess's, Hakaze, interference, travels to the next stash of talismans since they always tracked her movements just in case. The princess' confidence stems from the protection granted to her by the Tree of Genesis, the one which upholds the logic and order of the world. But something feels off to Yoshino. Seimin and the rest of the clan also draw on its power, so why revive the Tree of Exodus and trap the princess on an island? Yoshino has flashbacks to a date he and Aika had in a similar aquarium. She always quoted Hamlet, believing everything happens for a reason. Though this aquarium is abandoned and the fish turn to iron. They find the talismans just as Tetsuma waltzes through the doors. Hakaze questions why the clan would rebel against their purpose of reviving the Tree of Genesis. Tetsuma replies that she's become oblivious by imposing her will on the others. It's better if she dies on that island. One of the talismans they retrieve is the exact same necklace that Aika gave Yoshino, making him question the veracity of fate. Maybe she was right. But why then, was she brutally murdered? Mihiro devises a plan to flood the place and threaten to electrocute Tetsuma and his henchmen, allowing the duo to escape without facing a real mage head-on. Hakaze sends them to meet Janikura, who is holding on to a special talisman that will turn the tide in their favor. Only one obstacle stands in their way: the secret password. Boobs that don't shake aren't boobs at all. They're in. But they find it strange how Janikura talks about the princess in the past tense, until he claims that she's been dead this whole time. He verified the body himself, even though all that remains is her skeleton. He doesn't want to know their plans since he's neutral in the clan's dispute and isn't actually a true member of the clan and can't use magic. The two of them ruminate on this new development while riding the bus. Out of nowhere, the ground starts shaking and there's a sudden influx of butterflies. People begin turning to iron as another one of the Tree of Exodus giant orb-like fruit emerges from beneath the earth. Mahiro tells the bus driver to floor it. He'll be safe as long as he's near them. The princess gives them permission to move in on Seimon's location. Meanwhile, Natsumura meets with Junikura and asks him to join their side and give up on remaining neutral. Junikura levels him with ease and warns him that Seimon wouldn't appreciate his actions. Junichiro wonders whether Mahiro and Yoshino are aware that the Tree of Genesis has a higher likelihood of ending the world. Yoshino is taken off guard that night when Mahiro asks if he knew Aika had a boyfriend. Hoping he hadn't been found out despite all the evidence right under Mahiro's nose, he replies that he couldn't picture it, wondering if his face gave anything away. They open the briefcase to discover the special talisman is a gun wrapped in chains, which seems odd given that the others have all been trinkets, more or less. The princess says that the tree absorbs the weapons anyway, so it still upholds order through their destruction. Mahiro can't see through Yoshino's thinly veiled disguise or even recognize his own feelings. But he can make astute observations apparently. They're surrounded by armed soldiers. The two jump into action, but Mahiro gets knocked out and Yoshino is taken. Although it's not against his will, he's made a deal to obtain some insurance, as well as a handgun in case things go south. The government agency's forces plan to launch a full assault on the Tree of Exodus. Mahiro saves Yoshino from his captors but seems not to suspect him in any way. The two decide to rest in an abandoned bus for the night, and Yoshino wonders what will happen after Mahiro will do after getting his revenge, while Mahiro wonders why Yoshino always stares at his phone. Yoshino dreams about the time he, Aika, and Mahiro spent at their summer home, trying to keep their relationship from Mahiro, but suddenly wakes up to the special talisman's barrel pointed right at his head. Mahiro laughs and tells him to get ready to head out. Seimon notices the forces approaching. There's practically an army marching on the location of the Tree of Exodus. It's too soon. He wasn't expecting they'd find him and launch an assault that fast. He orders the mages to focus their energy on maintaining the shield instead of concealing their position when he's informed that the barrier has been breached by the duo aiding Hakaz. Seimon intercepts them, standing beside a barrel. He tries to explain that all the destruction thus far was due to the Tree of Genesis trying to halt the Tree of Exodus reawakening. Since it feeds on the innovation and fruits of a civilization, it has the potential to consume everything. The breakdown of logic and order will cause the Tree of Genesis to hit the reset button on the entire civilized world. Seimon poses the question of whether Mahiro is willing to destroy the world, but he already knew about the possibility of the collapse of civilization and doesn't care either way. He just wants the princess back so she can find the killer and avenge Aika. But Seimon retorts with the possibility that she's already dead, opening the barrel and revealing the skeleton Junichiro confirmed as Hakaz. To prove his point, he asks the princess what year it is, but her response shocks Yoshino and Mahiro. She's 2 years off, and by her own count, has only been on the island for 4 months. It seems like time really is out of joint. To avoid enacting the Tree of Genesis wrath by killing her himself, Seimon left her to the elements, and waited for nature to do it for him. Yoshino is about to give up and hand over the talismans when Mahiro makes a new deal. If Seimon can find his sister's killer, then he won't pull the trigger. He agrees, but when learning that it's someone within the clan, he doesn't believe that anyone would willingly give up their magic by using it for destruction. Yoshino picks up the doll to speak with the princess. When she mentions Hamlet, he has another flashback to a time when Aika was alive. Revenge, a mage, an island, a tragedy that doesn't end in tragedy, the Tempest. Natsumura meets Yamamoto on the battlefield, but she has the talismans that Yoshino gave her, and she won't make it easy for him, even if it's the last thing she does. Seimon is baffled when Yoshino tells Mihiro he will reveal the identity of Aika's boyfriend if he changes his mind and helps the princess, or at least hears him out until Seimon can find the killer. Not even the princess can believe her ears. The whole fate of the world is in the balance, and the mere mention of a boyfriend completely changes everything? Yoshino reasons that they must have been in the Tree of Genesis' favor, or else everything up to that point would have been pure coincidence, and that's even more ridiculous than the events themselves. Yamamoto goes head-to-head with Natsumura to save the enemy artillery from disintegration, and hopefully buy enough time to stop the tree's revival. Yoshino goes on to argue, with the help of Mihiro, that Seimon's plan was to make the princess lose all hope when she found out about already being dead by the time they got to the tree and being powerless to fulfill her bargain and aid in its destruction. That is exactly what he planned on, creating any disadvantage he could to render the princess helpless. But they haven't quite figured everything out. How does he plan to bring her back then? Wouldn't a time paradox be created? Seimon built in redundancy and thinks he has them beat. But Yoshino proposes that she was trapped in stasis for 2 years before even going to the island without realizing it, so she would believe it without question. Despite being wrong, he makes Seimon drop his sword, unable to believe this kid is actually convincing Mihiro. He has no idea what's happening right now. So, Yoshino asks for proof of this time prison Seimon swears exists. It doesn't matter though. If the talisman is activated, then he'll have to bring back the princess himself regardless. He comes up with a plan to prove the time shift. The princess can carve something into the barrel, and if it shows up in the future, they'll have no choice but to accept the truth. It doesn't matter though. Yoshino's gambit was to make Seimon panic. Hakaz details how the dolls work. They must be roughly the same size and shape and imbued with some piece of the caster. She soaked them in her own blood. They already have a piece of the princess in the shape of a human, her skeleton. Seimon is completely hopeless now. They've figured out his fail-safe to bring the princess back. Meanwhile, Junikura stops Natsumura for questionable reasons, despite his neutrality in the matter. Seimon plays his last hand, admitting that he hid an offering on the island great enough to transport her body onto her skeleton in the future. Despite this, he tries to convince Mihiro that this is all the Tree of Genesis' fault. It must have caused Aika's death and brought Yoshino and him here to save Hakaz. Junikura convinces both Natsumura and Yamamoto that the fight is pointless and that if he doesn't heal her, then he becomes a murderer, which is a serious offense within the clan. The killer would lose their ability to use magic. Forgiveness must be asked of the tree through a ritual in which a high-ranking official determines whether it was performed. The princess corroborates this, but if it were to happen, then they would not be caught in the web of magic after all. Seimon uses this to try and convince Mihiro that it's all too convenient for the princess. Obviously fate favors her, but what if fate favored him? Remembering his sister quoting The Tempest, Mihiro calls out both Yoshino and Seimon for trying to buy time. Seimon was stalling until the investigation results came back. If he brought the killer, then there would be no reason to tempt him to join his side and not Hakaz, the whole time trying to revive the Tree of Exodus before any action was taken. Seimon receives the call telling him that it wasn't a member of the clan who murdered Aika. No one had done anything illogical. Everyone is shocked. While Mihiro begins to lose it, the princess has a revelation. Since she serves the Tree of Genesis, the only other person who could escape the web would be the mage serving the Tree of Exodus. Since trying to revive the Tree of Exodus, the one who serves it must have been unleashed. It's the princess' duty to decide when to revive the Tree of Genesis, which most likely means it's the Tree of Exodus mage who must approve its revival. Mihiro figures that if it was the Exodus mage, then Seimon's logic falls apart, and his argument has no weight. He falls to his knees in defeat, unable to accept that the princess now has the upper hand. On the battlefield, Junichi and the others watch as the Tree of Genesis rapidly grows, tendrils protruding out of the earth, surrounding the Tree of Exodus. But he doesn't believe Hakaz approved it yet. Mihiro hesitates. What kind of reversal of fortune goes this well? Seimon might be involved, but the Tree of Genesis could have faked the existence of the Mage. There's too much uncertainty. But even still, Yoshino prays that Mihiro will at least give the princess a chance. It could take hours to find the talisman, and by that time, the Tree of Exodus could very well be revived. If the Tree of Genesis really could produce miracles, then why hadn't? Just as Hakaz begins to doubt, an unarmed missile drops from the sky. But if it could do this, it could kill someone just as easily. They prepare the skeleton and items for the transfer as the princess swears to help find Ika's killer for all the help Mihiro and Yoshino offered her despite never really knowing the truth. She promises him that if the Tree of Genesis is the killer, then he can take her life. The Tree of Genesis breaks through the barrier, but the Tree of Exodus retaliates. It looks like it has the edge in this battle. However, the Tree of Genesis seems to be reviving all over the world as trunks begin popping up everywhere. Before Hakaz can even attempt to stop either, a tendril slices Yoshino's torso vertically while another branch pierces Mihiro's chest. The princess doesn't think twice about using the special talisman to try and revive Yoshino while ordering Seimin to revive Mihiro. Nobody knows what these ancient godlike trees are or what they are truly capable of. Even those who harness their power have no idea what they've unleashed upon the world. Thank you for sticking until the end. Subscribe for more videos like this.